Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Destination Recreation Podcast. Today, we're joined by a person I call a friend I've known for, I don't know, probably at least a dozen years or so. Worked with him in several different capacities. He's worked for a couple different companies in selling fitness gear. And so we've worked with him a couple different projects, had lots of conversations with him at different trade shows and conferences. He has a wealth of knowledge. So I want to welcome John Brey to the show. He has a 35-year history working in the fitness industry, starting, working with companies like Badger Magnum, Woodway, Star Trek, True, Core Health and Fitness. Has a big background in helping develop the education market for Woodway and growing the largest segment for treadmill sales. He's also worked with lots of professional sports teams in the MLB, NBA, NFL on the East Coast, and currently serves as the CEO of NextPlay. So please welcome John Brey to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sean. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
It's good to have you. It's been a little bit. Unfortunately, I did not get to connect with you at the Athletic Business Show back in November in Florida. I think it was a busy show. I think for everybody. I think it was because I attended the Athletic Business when it was here in San Antonio 2 years ago. It wasn't nearly as busy as I think the show in Orlando was. And I think, Orlando's always a bigger show anyway. But I think it was more heavily attended. I think as we're getting more past COVID, I think it was good to see a lot more people out there.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I was in San Antonio as well, and it was not heavily attended, but the difference between that and the next year at Athletic Business, I would say it was significantly up as well. And I saw the same thing happen in the nurses side of things from Portland to Pittsburgh this last year. The attendance is growing. I think people are more apt to be out in public and reconnecting again on lots of different things, whether that's education or looking at equipment or whatever they need for their facilities.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was part of the planning for University of Maryland before I left there, not knowing that I was going to be leaving later that year, but in part of getting things in motion and set in place, for students to return to campus during the height of COVID. So, I still talk to the people there, and interesting how they've kind of continued with some of those trends there. Things that I would never have thought would have continued to stay, like the main recreation center, the East Gym. Half of that gym has weight equipment on it. It is covered with rubber mats, has racks, bumper plates, and something, conversations that had been held many years before that, and there was never any interest in it. And now, as a necessity, it's continued to stay there. And I was actually surprised to see that. They invested that much money in the equipment. I'm just like, what if you actually go back to everything's crammed back into the rooms that they were before, and we have everybody in close contact and everything? It's just like, what are you going to do with all that equipment? Because I definitely know they don't have the storage space for all that. And
right.
Don't want to have to incur the cost of storing it somewhere or try to turn around and sell it because it's going to be sold at a loss.
Well, I think that's one of the things in terms of you asked about trends and so forth earlier on. I think that's one of the things that you're seeing more now that COVID or students, I should say, are back on campus, is that what traditionally was a very good mixture of cardio equipment and strength equipment, whether that was free weight or circuit equipment, has now shifted dramatically where the weight room, again, circuit and free weight equipment, is getting more and more usage, and the cardio side of things has decreased in popularity or usage rates, whichever you'd like to refer to it as. But I've talked to multiple schools across the country, and they're taking full lines of ellipticals out. Arc trainers, which used to be a very popular form of exercise, most of those are now gone too. And so it's just interesting that what was is no longer the same thing anymore, that people want to exercise, but they're okay lifting. And I think that was partly, in fact, from, I don't think people wanted to run or breathe heavily wearing a mask. And so they shifted to strength and started to see the benefits of strength, physically, cardiovascularly, everything else. And so that's made a huge change.
I think I was before I went to the Athletic Business Show in San Antonio, where I was seeing more of the articles about health and fitness articles coming out saying that there's a greater benefit for lifting weights than doing 45 minutes or an hour on an elliptical machine. And so then going to the conference and talking to people and talking to, sales reps are like, and talking to people at schools are like, yeah, we're pulling out rows and rows of ellipticals, we're still holding on to the treadmills because people still wanted that. But like we're pulling out ellipticals, we're pulling out bikes. And I was just like, well, what happens when this, another article comes back or research comes back the other way and says, oh no, we need to go back to, an hour's worth of time on an elliptical machine. Then what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, the good thing about the strength versus cardio is on the free weight side of things, as you know, because you were in that position, it costs a whole lot less to put in a rack than it is to buy a treadmill or buy an elliptical. And so when it goes back, yes, you'll still have that stuff. But what I'm also seeing is some of the recreation departments are partnering with student residents or res life, I should say. And so some of that stuff is moving down the line or potentially will move down the line when things kind of shift back. So I don't know if it's storing or just reconfiguring and buying new stuff again.
Well, it's kind of hope that that's what they would do is find another way to use it, especially in residences on college campuses. It helps bring students into if they can. I remember, I think it was San Antonio. I was listening to. I want to think it was Georgia. It was a project at Georgia. I think it was a one of those public-private partnerships working with resident life and the recreation department and getting living spaces built and adding additional recreation spaces kind of tailored to each of the residence halls that were being built. And so,
Right.
broadening the recreation's footprint on the campus. So it was interesting to
Right.
hear that there's a lot more of that happening out there and successfully, because I know that's before I left the university, there was a couple attempts at that involving the recreation department and resident life that didn't come to fruition.
Right. Um, so it's been interesting in my new role in my new company because I'm focusing a little bit more on the wellness side in addition to the fitness, so more a holistic kind of view. But when I start talking to universities, it's become very evident that unfortunately that there's a lot more silos that are on campus than I ever imagined in my past experience. And so, you know, rec is one thing and res life is another. And in the case of you're mentioning Georgia, it was Georgia Tech that was speaking at uh, San Antonio, and they're in the process of doing lots of different things, and I'm working with them. But it's who's paying for what, who's going to do what, and so instead of being focused on what's the benefit for the student, it comes down to, all right, who's taking control, who's paying, who's maintaining, and so it's a little frustrating at times when I just worked with either athletics or recreation. They just stroked the check or PO or whatever it was, and we walked in and put the equipment in. It's a little different now, and at least my experiences.
Yeah, I mean that's the bureaucracy of working on a college campus. We had the same thing, there was one project where we were going to get a segment of the one dining hall in South Campus because dining services was going to renovate it. There was a lot of unused space. They had a convenience store that was going to get used by their IT department, but then there was going to be maybe 25,000 square feet worth of space available for rec. They're like, great, because we don't have a true facility on South Campus. We really need one. You can't get more South Campus than this. And then the project goes over to the design board on campus and the architecture people, and then campus starts throwing all their fees onto things for design and all this other stuff, and the project a little more than doubled in cost. And dining services is like, we can't afford that. And then Rex like, yeah, we don't know. I mean, for that cost, we can build a standalone building, because at the time we still had a chunk of we still had a little piece of real estate earmarked for a standalone facility. So for that, it was going to be a let's see, to put in perspective, when the main rec center opened in '98, the cost of that facility was $39.5 million for 250,000 square feet. For a standalone facility, we're looking at maybe 70,000 square feet, I think, maybe 60. There, we were getting a price tag of 115 million.
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
Now we might as well. Sense. Now we can add on to our other facilities for less than that, and maybe, as long as you can keep the university, like the other departments, out of it, adding their fees for whatever, their consultation fees or whatever it was. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. So and that can be a much larger and broader subject for maybe a different day, but it is very disappointing at times, either being involved or looking on the outside of all those extra fees and what it takes to do it. And, in the case of that res hall, it probably couldn't have cost that much. It's just all the fees that people wanted to get their slice of the pie in, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, what is the mission of Next Play, and what are some of the partners you're working with?
So Next Play was kind of a takeoff. The meaning behind it was I had been a coach, avid, athlete, player, golfer, a number of things. And when I was coaching, one of the things, I was basketball at the time, and if you had a problem, or if you had, you missed a layup or you missed a defense assignment on one end, you needed to let that go, and then you needed to move to the other end because you needed to be ready for the next play. And so that really was kind of the genesis of the name of the company. Was, this is what my last experiences were. This is my now next play. So I knowing a lot of people within the college recreation field, I took a step back and said, okay, what's going on on college campuses today, and how can I continue to work within that field? So, being 35 years into the industry, I continued on with some of the relationships that I have with Core Health and Fitness, TRX, Intech Weights, some flooring companies that I refer to on the fitness side of things. But what I also did is, after about 10 years of going to a lot of the conferences, whether that's the national conference or the regional conferences that were taking place, there's been this very decidedly topic that's been talked about, and that was wellness and well-being. And so I thought I wanted to align myself kind of to be out on the forefront of wellness products, wellness offerings, things of that sort, because together, between fitness and restorative, right, is what gives you the holistic view of what a student is, I think, is potentially looking for, to help on lots of different things in terms of wellness and well-being. So on that side of things, I originally partnered with a company called Three Sages, which was completely restorative content for yoga, stretching, meditation, breath work, and sleep. And those were the main five, in terms of the pillars. It then also kind of iterated into a company that bought them, or is a large owner of them, called Gymlead. And Gymlead is not only doing the restorative, but they also do fitness content as well. So thus the the holistic side of things. So I've gone on to campuses and we've worked with them um, on providing safe spaces where they can come in and get a 5 minute 10-minute meditation, or they if they couldn't make it to a yoga class, they could at least go in and do maybe a 20, 25, 30-minute yoga class. But then I was finding was is that not only were the schools looking for that, but because of things like COVID, where the students weren't coming back in terms of employing or being an employee, they were starting to look at fitness content as well because they couldn't offer as many classes or they couldn't give the content that they wanted. And so collectively between all of that, we can all go to a campus and we can provide them with both sides of the house or specifically one or the other if they want. And that can be branched from, University of Maryland per se, or to any of the other associated campuses within, their hierarchy, if you will. So that was kind of the genesis of Next Play was trying to not focus on one side, but really give both fitness and wellness equal billing on what I'm doing.
And how many college campuses have you worked with so far?
Right now, we are in up and running in two campuses, one very large campus, one smaller campus, and we have orders that are on their way or in house, I should say, for four more. So going back to the original content of wellness being a much longer, drawn out process within the bureaucracy of the universities, it takes a while to get that from initial conversation to, oh yeah, this is a good idea, let's move it forward.
And so are some of these campuses also, are they bringing in their health and wellness teams that are on the campus too as part of the conversation, as people that might be the managing partners of it, or just that they can partner with so that the information gets shared broader across campus as so that a broader audience can use the product?
Yeah. So several times I get in meetings. Initially, it might, because of my contact, it starts with the recreation director, but then it quickly becomes, professional services, a wellness team. There might be residence life that's involved with that conversation. Um, and usually, again, it's about 5 or 6 people at max where we go in or I go in and we start having those conversations. And between, the content, the visual content, or some of the products that I represent on the wellness side, which could be massage, could be red light therapy, could be um, aromatherapy, things of that sort. Then all of a sudden, parts of that might shift off to saying, well, you know what, we could really do that in, making our residence hall different than what we've done in the past, and giving them the students different offering. One campus I talked to, they looked at it and rightfully so. They're like, we want to be able to equip, especially our incoming freshmen, with a way that they can take control of their wellness journey right from the beginning. And so it grows from the time that they come in to the time that they leave. So things like, a 5 minute, 10-minute meditation, which might be foreign to them as a freshman, at least in the first couple of weeks, all of a sudden starts becoming a regiment of what they're doing. And they start feeling better about what they're doing on campus and in life.
That's awesome. I mean, I think, and with COVID, I think a lot more of that is needed. Um, for to help people over those socialization humps coming into camp. I mean, it can be very overwhelming when you start at a college campus, depending upon, especially if you come from a small town or a small high school, and you come to a campus of 30,000 students, and you're just, a very small fraction of that. And then
Right.
you're put into a situation where the roommate you may not know, somebody
Right.
completely opposite of you, could be from another country, and you could have an international student roommate. And so I think all those things. I mean, I think about that how stressful college is, and then having a conversation the other day with another colleague who he's at Florida State now and talking about because he oversees conduct in the dean's office, a lot of conduct cases, and so finding the root causes of things, and so I think these offerings will help those students maybe nip those things in the bud, so that might help on the back end reduce maybe potential cases like that on campus as well, where you have less students are finding coping skills. Because I think unfortunately I've heard other cases of students not making it through school because they can't handle the stress, they drop out, or other things have happened. And so it's I think more colleges and universities really need to look at this as a basic part of the college experience as well, to help
Yeah,
them, coping skills, so that way you don't have people, down the line. It helps them when they get in the professional world as well.
right. Yeah, I think if you take a look at colleges and universities, over a long period of time, you can start to see the fact that mental well-being over the last 10, 15 years, if you drew a curve, it goes straight up. And on the campuses today, typically, unless you're in what they consider to be crisis, if you went to a professional services, the average is when you walk in that you're somewhere between a 6 week and up to 12 weeks before you can see a professional to talk about it. Well, you add that in to the fact that, first of all, only 25% of that campus is going to seek out professional services. It's getting better, but the stigma of going in and seeing somebody, it's still there. And it's significantly still there, especially on the male side of view, than it is on the female side. So if we can go in and we can give someone that ability early on in their career to understand that it doesn't need to be intrusive on their day, it can be very inclusive, where it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes here and there. And in fact, one of the offerings that we have, you know, it could be on your student's phone, so that if they had a bad interaction between, maybe it's a fellow classmate, like you talked about with your roommate, maybe it's getting an exam back that your expectation was a letter grade that is much higher than what was reality, you could at least plug your headphones in, and in a 5-10 minute walk between classes, kind of get yourself ready and right again before you go in to see the next professor. And you're now in tune to what they're saying, so that you don't get another grade like you just got. So those are some of the things that we can offer. And I think it's very difficult for students when you start thinking about all the things that have happened across the United States, um, whether that's suicide, or I happened to be on a campus the day after a roommate killed another roommate. Right? Those are things that I'm not saying what we have would have prevented that situation, but it's another way to cope, and it's another way to again get back on your wellness journey, and understand it's there's more to life than erupting and getting through it.
I mean, I had a student that worked for me. She was diagnosed with leukemia her senior year, battled through that to still graduate on time and everything. I had friends when I started college, and I had people from out of state. I had a guy who was living in Maryland. He's from Kansas, really far, really far away from home. No support network, no relatives in the area. Nothing, just other than an anchor for him. He was part of a fire company, volunteer fire company, so that was kind of the family for him. But grew to stay in the area. He's a fire chief in DC, and married one of the girls on our floor, and they have a beautiful family. But there's all of those things where you have a lot of people that could be coming from far away, you know, uh, fish out of water situations, that having another means there. And like I said, and you're talking about the length of this to get in to see somebody like in the counseling center at Maryland. I know that was one of the just several times discussions hearing about that too is, because counseling services was under the Division of Student Affairs and Recreation was, and that was one of the things they were constantly trying to work on is improving, getting more counselors hired so they can improve the response time. I mean, there was the creation of the beta team for campus too. So if you had any concerns, you could do an anonymous um, note to the beta team. It's a behavioral, I forget what the E stands for, behavioral something threat assessment team.
Okay.
And it was comprised of many different professionals across campus. Um, that would, from the police department, counseling center, and all those kind of things, that would help respond to those big crisis moments. But I think
Yep.
it was a great tool that was available and probably helped prevent a lot of things. But it's one of those things. I think I hope, I continue to hope that we see this shift in the culture in colleges and universities and changing the stigma, because I know me personally, recently with losing my dad back in 2021, so recently, um, that was one of the few times in my life I straight away told my wife that I probably need to go see somebody, because I have a lot of things to process and deal with. Opposite, I learned the hard way after my mom. I was a freshman in college when my mom passed away, and you went back to school and dealing with it, and obviously not a very constructive way. Did a lot of not well in class,
Right.
worked more, a lot of sleeping. Hindsight, retrospect, probably wasn't a good decision to go right back to college.
Yep.
Probably should have took some time off, but raised in an environment of a dad who was raised, generationally, that you don't talk about those things, you keep it to yourself. You
Right.
don't seek help, you medicate it however you handle it, whether it's alcohol or things like that.
Yep.
And it's not, and if that's not the way to handle it, there's people out there to help you. And I mean, these are good services to offer, college students.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you. And I think, one of the things, because I sought out some help a couple of years back and still see someone occasionally. And I think one of the things, especially obviously for men, as you had just mentioned, hey, you're not hurt, rub some dirt on it, mentality kind of thing, is that I looked at it when I first went in there. I'm like, this is somebody who's got absolutely no interest in anything other than what you're saying in the moment. They don't know the people that typically they know the people that you're talking about or to or the issues that you have. And so I just looked at it as saying, hey, this is a great way for me to just talk to somebody with really no skin in the game other than helping me work my way through a number of things. And um, I had, I'll say I had a child who was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy when he was 5 years old, and we were told 13 to 18, and we just lost him this last December. He made it to 31 years. And so although it was great and everything was there, the outward appearance of my wife and I was such that people were amazed at what we did and how we did it. And we did really well, but there was a lots of things that I, just needed to talk to some people about. And I hope that others, through watching, whether you're into sports and seeing some of the athletes today starting to talk to people, or some of the artists and musicians, and they too are coming out and saying, hey, we're talking to people. It's my hope that yes, more schools have more help, more ability to help the student start right from day one as a freshman, and help them grow and get better at what they're doing. And I'll give a huge shout out to Virginia Tech and some of the things that they're doing on their campus. Um, they have taken in Res Life, they have now have a person living or an office that's there that those students can come to when they have problems. And they've gotten rid of the name resident assistant, right? So there's no more RAs, because the connotation of a RA at least when I was in college, and maybe for yourself, Sean, was that when did you go see the RA? Usually when you were in trouble, right? They came in, they're like, hey, you did this or you did that or whatever. So they got rid of that name. And so now people are starting to think, I'm like, oh, all right, I can go to that person. And then from there, depending on what is needed, they funnel them to wherever they need to go. So, just a different view on what they're doing on their campus, but we're working with them or trying to work with them as well.
One thing that's important too. I mean, given their history, back with the shooting in, was it 2007, right?
Yep.
So I mean, it's good. And yeah, I had the same thing. I mean, I tried to be an RA at Maryland. Applied 3 times. Third time made as an alternate, and then we had to take a full long semester class about how to be an RA in order to, from the programming aspect, because you were supposed to do monthly programming with all your residents, but also drug and alcohol education, all of those, and the different services that are on campus, and how you can have those conversations with your residents, or roommate conflict, conflict resolution, and all those kind of things,
Yep.
which is good. And because I know my RA, she wasn't present. The only time I really saw our RA was when she had weekend duty. Otherwise, it was her turn to be on duty. She was there. Otherwise, you could never, hardly ever find her.
Yep.
So hopefully it's good. So
Yeah.
question is, so when you started your undergrad career, besides, thinking about becoming a D3 basketball champ, what did you see yourself where you're at today? Or, I mean, what was your original idea when you started college? What were you looking to major in and do after college?
Um, yeah, I believe. Well, I know for a fact that I had two distinct paths that I wanted to take. One, I am one of five children. I'm the fourth of five children, and um, two of my brothers also got into different sides of sales, and so I'm watching them. Right, I'm like, I thought sales was the way to go. So I originally started as a marketing major because there was no such thing as sales in college. And then the other part of it was because I, was a basketball player and saw success in high school and in college. I thought, okay, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a coach and do, uh, what my previous coaches were able to do for me, and be a mentor and give the game back to whether that was at a youth level, collegiate level, or beyond. So those were the two tracks that I started with. The more that I took marketing classes, and some of them, I realized that I wanted to go back into communications. So I became a communications major, still with a marketing minor, and then also with coaching. So that was kind of the track. So I took kinesiology, and I took a lot of the coaching classes that were there, along with how to get in front of a group and do the speech classes, how to write effectively, how to do some of those things. So looking back at it, all of those things today are exactly what I did in college as a preparatory to get where I am. The only difference is I had no idea whatsoever that I was going to be selling fitness equipment for the large portion of my career. Um, I didn't know what I was going to sell, but it ended up being by happenstance. I moved from a small town college into the largest city in Milwaukee, or in Wisconsin, which is Milwaukee. Uh, was a headhunter for a while, and a friend that I played basketball against happened to be working at a company that was looking for somebody in the fitness world to be a manager of a new store that they were opening. So I applied. I got the job. I think within a year's time, I became the commercial rep for them, and it just kept going from there. I went from a dealer to a manufacturer's rep to starting working with a specific treadmill, which was Woodway at the time. My parents thought I was a little crazy because at the time Woodway was, and this was 1992, 93. It was a $11,000 treadmill, and my parents like, we don't we don't even have cars that cost that much, or our house never cost that much when we bought it. Um, but they quickly understood or saw what I was doing, and moved forward that way. And I just happened to understand that, all right, well, if we're going to sell this 11,000 or $10,000 treadmill, where would be the best place for us naturally to go into? And it became an opportunity for me to look and say, well, we're concerned about future growth. Well, if we want to hit decision makers from tomorrow, whether that was on the recreation side or athletic side, we needed to start spending time in college recreation and college athletics, and really kind of grew that market for Woodway. And then because of that, I got noticed by a couple other companies and got recruited to do the same thing for them that I was doing for Woodway at the time. And at first, uh, there was a lot of hesitancy there, but the good thing was is that the other company took me out of being just an East Coast rep to being a West Coast rep, which then gave me more people to meet across the country. Um, so did I envision that when I was going into college? No, but it all led itself directly to this.
Yeah, it's like a conversation I had with somebody the other day. Just you got to walk through the doors that are presented to you, and so you did. And like I said, I mean, I think it's a testament to your staying power because one of the biggest things I've noticed over the years going to all these conferences and seeing the trade shows and seeing the people, the companies, how I remember the first time I went to athletic business. The trade show took up three of those huge rooms in the convention center. Now they're into one. Now it's pared down to one big room, and because it used to have all these different companies, and how they've kind of been consolidated and bought out and things like that. And because my first time going athletic business, my sole goal was to try to find a new spin bike for us because we had Schwinn's, and I was like, we need to find something else. And I think there at the time there was about 20 some manufacturers that had spin bikes. I tested every one of those spin bikes over like the 2.5 days that the trade show was open. Um, but it's just seeing people, like you see people naturally, companies get bought out, paper moving companies, but then still seeing people, stay with certain companies and making it through the next level of whether consolidation, they're being consolidated with another company, and the company bought them out, but they're still moving up. And so seeing those familiar faces has always made it a lot easier going back to, and having connections with people at the different companies, know that it's a person that I can go to and ask, straight questions. I'm gonna get a straight answer. I'm not gonna get a salesman's pitch. Every time I ask you a question, you're gonna be like, you're one of those people that you're gonna be honest with me, like whether whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, honestly, which is you know again in sales. That's why I don't think I could ever do sales because I'd always be honest no matter what I was selling, and it would probably be to a detriment. I probably wouldn't make a company much money if I was, you know. So
Yeah, early on, so before I got into my professional career, I did a number of different sales jobs um, during summer between semesters, and some of them were high pressure sales, some of them were canned scripts and things of that sort. So there used to be the Ben Franklin close, right? So what in the Ben Franklin close, what you would do is write all the positives on one side and all the negatives on the other, and you would say, Sean, look, you have listed out all of these things, and they're all positive here, and there's only a couple of negatives over here. This is what you should do, right? And I, you did that because that's how you were trained. But when I went to go work in one of the first large manufacturers that I did, I had a gentleman at the time is like, look, we want to make sure that we're providing them with a couple of things: honest and true information. We don't want to rip on another company because you don't want to do that simply because that's someone else's livelihood, right? And that's there's nothing wrong with, as you found out, there were 20 different bikes on that day. There probably wasn't a huge difference between all 20 of those bikes. So they're all relatively the same. Plus, as you've already mentioned, there was so much consolidation that in our industry is relatively small that you never knew in the future who you might be working for or working with. So I just took the tact of I don't want to tell people anything specifically against another company in order to sell that product. I wanted to sell things on the merits of who I was, first and foremost, what I could do and what I could help them with. And then two, or the third thing was is, that the product that I was representing was a quality product. And so that's the tack that I ended up, taking instead of, going out there. And so you let your reputation hopefully precedes you in a very positive manner, as opposed to some others in the industry where you do business with them once or maybe twice, but there's not a third time or a fourth time. And unfortunately, over my career, I've had several repeat people come back to me and say, "Hey, when you are in this position, please come back to our campus because we'd like to do business with you." So that's, I think, a testament of, at least I hope, of who I am and what I've been able to do over 35 years.
Well, I think so because I think if you hadn't had that, you probably would not have got the longevity you have in your career. So, like I said, and you've worked you've worked for all great companies. So there isn't in some fashion somewhere down the line, every one of those companies you work for, I've worked on their products. We've had their products in our facility. So
Yep.
it's there's no one company out there that has a bulletproof line that from top to bottom, every one of their machines is great, and that's all. I mean, that's all you want. There's a mix and match, and
Right.
there's a nice variety out there. So you just got to be selective.
I agree with you. I think that you're right. There's a lot of companies that are very good that do some things extremely well. Um, that the old line was, if you bought a line of circuit equipment, there was usually about 8 pieces that are just like everybody else's, two that are much better than everybody else's, and two that are worse than everybody else's. And that kind of went across the board with everybody. So I appreciate your saying I worked for some really good companies, and I thought so too. But and the experiences have been great.
Um, so with what you're doing currently with Next Play, so is there any other trends that you potentially see on the horizon for athletics, recreation, or on in the wellness spectrum?
Well, I think with regards to wellness, one of the things, well, I'll start with recreation. One of the things with recreation is you're starting to see more and more functional fitness, right? We want to know that, hey, it's great to do this movement, but how does that apply to me, going out and skiing, lifting, boxes, running, obstacles because I'm getting chased or whatever, right? You want to be able to do something functionally. So that's the first thing that's happened. Uh, Secondly, I was at a conference with somebody and they were talking about the way that the future for recreation is a lot of times it's looking at what athletics is doing. So if you take a look back at, the early 90s and early 2000s, there were a lot of schools that were, at least on the athletic side of things, that were split between doing, Olympic style movement or power movements. And those things didn't translate very well into the recreation center. In fact, at the University of Maryland, if I remember, um, there was a no chalk policy that you guys had. And so that was part of the things that, yeah, maybe you had it in athletics, but you're starting to see more of those things transfer from athletics into the regular recreation area. Um, so you think seeing things like um, sleds that are being pushed, battle ropes that are being used, things of that. I think that that trend will continue in looking at what athletes at that level are doing and moving over, because I think, quite honestly, most of us think of ourselves as athletes. We may not be as gifted as a Division 1 player or an NBA or NFL player, but that's maybe not our purpose. We want to be really good at it, being a triathlete, or we want to be the best golfer that we can be, or whatever. So I think that's first and foremost with regards to recreation. I think with regards to wellness, I think the trend is starting to turn more and more that people are more open to doing a lot of different things. It used to be that, meditation would be something that nobody would do. Like, I can't get, I can't sit quiet for 5 minutes. Well, does that make it wrong? No, it's getting your mind incrementally to the point where you can spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and so forth. So I think all of that is starting to change, that people are starting to understand that positive affirmations, understanding what's going on in your life and moving forward, that's one of the things that's happening. I also think that things like massage therapy, whether that's, from a masseuse or from people like hydro massage or human touch with the massage chairs, that's also making a difference, because people are now using it not only from a relaxing standpoint, but they're also using it post workout, right? I need to get ready for my next workout. Um, you're also seeing things like red light therapy that's helping with recovery, that's helping, at the molecular level of the mitochondria and changing some of that. Um, you're also seeing a lot of cryotherapy being done. So I think the wellness side is starting to get more and more people aware of what's out there and what's available to them. Uh, one of the hot topics right now is, you know, cold therapy, right? Whether that's, plunging into a cold bath or taking the end of your shower, the last 30 seconds or a minute is a cold portion of that before you get out. And it changes everything in terms of your dynamics, because it makes you become more alert. So I think a lot of those things are changing. As it comes to athletics, I don't really spend as much time in athletics as I used to, but you're seeing more things change with, instead of individual benches, you're seeing large rigs that are there. You're seeing multiple movements being done. I think you're also starting to see more and more people working on balance. I know it's a small thing, but balance does a tremendous amount of natural movement and changing planes, moving different things. So core is one of that, but just doing a lot of balance work, I think, is helping athletes more and more today.
Yeah, I know for me, working in the working sphere now, especially since I'm definitely a working supervisor in my current job, a lot of outdoor work and everything. The last probably 10 years for me working out has been more about functionality, to keep moving, for my body getting beat up in my younger years with wrestling and all the other work I've done, construction work and those kind of things. So it's trying to keep myself mobile, trying to reduce chances of injury while at work. So, and
Yep.
cryotherapy has been something I've been really wanting to try. Not cold plunging, but like you walk into the chamber that's minus 175. Like 3 or 4 minutes you're in there. There's a place around the corner from where I live here. I keep saying I need to go over there and give it a whirl and see what it feels like.
I too have not been in a cryotherapy chamber, but I have several friends that are either in that genre, if you will, or have gone. It is, again, something you work up to in terms of time, but the restorative powers of that have been documented very well, and probably something that would help you with, the sore muscles, sore joints, and just changing a lot of that. I do not necessarily daily, but at least a couple times a week. I do finish my showers with it being cold, or I have gone into a sauna and been sitting in a sauna for a little while, come out, and then purposely get into something that is cold just to get different movement in terms of blood patterns.
Yeah, I tried the finishing off the shower with cold water. And then it's yeah, you got to build yourself up to it. You just can't go right from where it's hot right all the way over to cold. You gotta like, I had to ease it into it. I tried over a couple of days. It was definitely different, having and then focusing. Because one of my coworkers, he read the Winhoff's book about it. He was talking about it because he talked about how he was starting to use it. He was starting to notice a change in his response with his allergies and thing
Yeah,
too, like how it's all supposed, physiologically tied together, and how it can help change your body that way. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting.
it
You,
is.
what you would not think doing that could affect, uh, yeah, I mean, reducing your response to allergies and those kind of things. So
Yeah, it's amazing what our bodies can do and how they can adapt and change. It's much like we've always, you and I have talked about this at times, right? Where you see the same person on, and I'll just say treadmill. You see the same person on the treadmill every day, and they, for weeks on end, and they'll come to you and they're like, "Hey, Sean, look, I'm working out every day. I don't know why I'm not getting better." Well, it's because our body has responded to that, and then it becomes, static in that it's like, all right, we're here. Well, the only way to change it is to do something different, or to shock it. And so I agree with you. It's like we occasionally become very comfortable in our lives, right? We're like, all right, I'll continue with what I'm doing, and then the aging process comes, and we're like, oh, I got to do something different now, right? What worked back then doesn't work. So changing things up is a good thing for you.
yeah, that's why I told people I no longer chase in like personal records lifting weights. I made my attempts in college, early on in college. I was able to put up some good weight for squat, deadlift, bench was always terrible. But I was like, I'm not worried about that anymore. I was like, my knees tell me I'm not even want to try to do barbell squats right now. Like I'm just like, no, I don't need to blow out a knee. I need to work. So yeah, it's a lot different. And then I remember a time too when I started college that I was okay spending 3 hours in the weight room. Do a heavy set of like leg press and take 20 minutes, and
Yep.
it probably wasn't an effective workout. So, but now it's like when I work out, I'm like, yeah, I want to be done in 40 minutes. I'm going to hit
Yep.
it hard, done in 40 minutes. I'm stretched. I'm done. There's so much more in the day you got to get done. So try to spend less time working out, but make it effective.
Right.
So
Right. So for me, it was along the same lines, right? Most of my workouts, when I do them, are under an hour. But quick analogy with regards to, so I played basketball up until I was about 45, and I was playing in this league, and a gentleman about my age, maybe a little bit older, went up for a layup, and a young, we'll call him 20-ish person, went out and took them out, and the guy ended up having ACL surgery. And so I'm like, I got to work tomorrow. And well, if we win, what do we win? We win a T-shirt, right? And so um, I shifted after I got done coaching, because I still love the game. I shifted into refereeing, so I still get the interaction and the moving up and down, but just different, right? And so we changed what we wanted to do initially to where we are now. So it's all good.
yep, exactly. So I think that's about it for time today. I want to thank you for taking this time to sit down with me. It was good to talk with you. We got to make sure we connect more often. Since I won't see you on, coming to visit a college campus. Unfortunately, I don't have any room yet for a weight room on the campus here, where the private school I'm at. But I'm trying to figure out where we can put some equipment. 'Cause I think we all the people could use it. You think there would be enough meditation space at being a church, but that's a different kind of meditation. I think
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. So I look forward, yes, from when we used to connect all the time, I look forward to doing it. And next time I'm even remotely close, I will make sure I reach out to you and let you know I'm down in Texas.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'll meet you. I'll meet you in San Antonio. Like I said, I was just talking to somebody recently, who's the director at UT Dallas. I used to work with her at Maryland. She's the director at the recreation department there at UT Dallas, Trisha Lasavio. So I told her I need to go up and visit her. I mean, t- I say it's only 3.5 hours. And to me, it's nothing what I used to spend, 2 hours driving home from Maryland when I was driving home to Baltimore. So 3.5 hour drive to me is not really that much. Where some people think, oh my god, that's forever. It
Yep.
doesn't. That's to me, it's not really. It's all relative. So
It is all relative. So
so thank you for your time. It was good to see you. I'm glad to hear everything's going well with the company, and keep doing big things.
thank you. I look forward to it, and I'll keep you abreast of what I'm doing.
All right, thanks, John.
Thank you.